Hello, everybody. This is the What is on the Tabletop podcast. My name is Symbio Joe. You can call me Joe. And my guest today is not your standard hive scum. Please introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Dylan. Whitetigertablecraft on Instagram.
Yes, and I said that because you are very much into Necromunda, am I right?
Yeah, it's kind of a recurring love. I keep coming back to Necromunda. Yeah.
And while I was searching or yeah, searching through your Instagram for some work I want to talk about, I found something that sparked my interest, and guests of the past and regular listeners might already know that you are experimenting around with your own rules. And I'm talking about the post where you said that you are mixing Necromunda and Stargrave in a fashion. What is that about?
Yeah, my part-time job, I work at the local game store here in town, and I'm the only part-timer that actually works there. Everybody else is full-time. There's about 5 other staff members, and because of that, I'm one of the only ones that has the time to regularly build and paint and play games. I do have a full-time job as well, but I'm not married. I don't have any kids. Blessed right now that I don't have a ton of obligations, so I'm able to really show up at the game store a lot and play a lot of games. And while I do enjoy 40K and things like that, it played some Age of Sigmar. One of the things that kind of my play group found that we really like is just really playing pretty sloppy, pretty fast and loose with the rules. And we were messing around with. We played the heck out of Frostgrave. We played a ton of Necromunda. We played the Planet 28 rules. We played Brutal Quest a bit, and we kind of started to realize, man, there's some mechanics that are very easy to port around. And so with Planet 28 and Brutal Quest, they use the full polyhedral dice system. I found it really easy to just steal some spells from Frostgrave and be able to just use the basically the same casting system to cast spells from Frostgrave in Planet 28 and Brutal Quest, or rules for different things, mechanics in Stargrave, or different mechanics in Necromunda, like rapid fire mechanics and scatter mechanics for grenades and stuff. Found it just like with just a little bit of tweaking, like pretty easy to get those to work kind of in this big sort of rule soup. Um, and so we sort of, scribbled down some home rules and kind of play this general Inquisitor 28, Necromunda kind of space fantasy, sci fantasy sort of setting. And it's kind of actually moving into the direction of actually starting to get some of these typed up, less of a rule book and more of a how to guide on how to compile some of your favorite rules, and sort of some conversions on if your character has this stat in this game, it might have, this stat in this other game, or stuff like that. And so it was really just born out of a desire that me and my buddies that I play with, we wanted to get a little crunchier with kind of what we were playing. And maybe that doesn't work for everybody, but so far it's worked for us. So we'll see how it turns out. But it's been quite the experiment.
Yeah, most certainly not for everybody, as I know some people are nearly religious when it comes to sticking to the rules. I, as a German, should know we do love our rules,
Sure.
and well, I'm more on the side of experimenting around, especially after I got a few years of gaming under my belt and saw where some of the official gaming system like Games Workshop is lacking, and seeing that they are not willing to change the weaknesses I see. And so I went on to fixing them, and I'm working on my own version of Kill Team right now. The new version of Kill Team does not play into that much, but I am very lucky, and I had a shower thought about it today that I am very lucky to have a gaming group that is willing to go and test what I have written down. And so far, I have two homebrew systems. One is goes more into the old Hero Quest direction, while the other one is well, a mod to Kill Team.
Okay.
And I feel very fortunate to have two groups of people who share my enthusiasm and liking of the rules, which is very important because there is with a growing market of different gaming systems, there you well acquire a taste for different things. You have these mechanics you like and dislike, and it is not a given that you find a group of people that shares your liking of certain rules as much as they do. And feel this is a very good baseline. I know the greatest problem, I think, is the stigma of your own rules, that you are start out doing it at a time where you are young, do not have that much experience, and come up with your own rules. And you might run to your local gaming shop and be like, hey, I have these own written rules, and they are most of the time not that balanced. And
Right.
from that standpoint, from that starting point, there is not much change when it comes to bringing your own rules, as long as you are, well, not a trained game designer. Um, they, but as you play and have a group of people you play with over the years, as I said before, you find out what works, what does not work. And from coming back to your gaming system you're working on, I am familiar with Frostgrave to a degree. I am familiar with Necromunda, and I wanted to know what are the specific mechanics where you say, "Oh, this works so much better for me. This is what I will port into Frostgrave, or this is what I will port into Necromunda." What are your um, favorites of mechanics?
Sure. Yeah. Um, game design wise for Frostgrave, one of the things that I love is that kind of has like a very old school RPG feel to a degree, and I think that's by design. Um, there's lots of treasure tables, lots of magic item tables, all that stuff, and rolling on those tables just does it for me. I just at the end of the game, I want to see what goodies I got, and I really enjoy kind of loads of loot, lots of tables and things. And so mechanically, you have to provide an opportunity to acquire that loot, right? And sometimes it's as simple as, oh, just go pick up this treasure. But in the scenarios that Joseph, I think McCullough is the author. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. Uh, he's done just a great job of these like really digestible but interesting scenarios where instead of treasure tokens, it's columns or it's whatever. Just there's a million scenarios he's written. You're in libraries or you're in dungeons and sewers or you're hunting down rock golems or just all sorts of stuff. And really, really quite enjoyed the way the scenarios were written for Frostgrave and the kind of the RPG elements, the old school RPG elements that come from that. My favorite one is my favorite mechanic in Frostgrave. Besides that, is I mentioned before the spell casting mechanic. Everything is on a d20. You roll your spells on a d20. There's different modifiers based on which school your wizard is aligned with and all this stuff. And so really, really enjoy that mechanic. This spell should be harder to cast because you're just not as good at that or whatever. And to me that makes sense, and it's very fluid to it feels very natural. Just roll a d20, and did I get the number? No. Okay, move on. And I really quite like that. The other mechanic that goes along with spellcasting that I quite like is in Frostgrave you have the ability to take damage. One for every point of damage that increases your die roll. So if you need a 12 but you roll an 8, you're able to take 4 points of damage to make the spell succeed, and I quite like that mechanic. And then in Necromunda, it's really interesting. Some like charge rules are really interesting. You can charge around corners and things. I find that to be a little bit more in line with a good narrative. It's like when I've never been in a real firefight in the Underhive, but I would imagine that there's probably not a lot of straight, open, and clear charge lanes. That would be my guess. If any of your listeners have ever been to Necromunda and they want to let me know, that would be good. But I really like that, and you can just charge in that game, and there's no big to do about have to roll this to get this target number, or whatever. You just basically say I'm going to charge, and a lot of the other rules I really like. That sometimes I think, as we said before, are too crunchy for some people. Pinning in that game, I think it makes sense. Even if you're not damaged, you're still pinned, and you still have to spend an action to get up. I imagine that's probably pretty accurate when it comes to firefights in the Underhive. And so the mechanics I find myself really interested in the most tend to be the ones that are relatively minor overall, but I think that in the long run they have a pretty big impact on the flavor of the game, and those are the things I think about when I'm considering which mechanics I want to kind of port into my my own kind of homebrew rule set. I don't know if that answers the question, or if I just went on and on about these games that I love.
Oh no, the question is answered. If as far as is it concerns me, um, coming to something that I had an epiphany about. That was the wounding system, because I was very in favor of the more time system, where you have kind of face down and stunned and out of action. And what I found out is that system is not very satisfying for the player, because you have your models out of action, or well, they are there, but you can't do much with them, and just turning them around or move them a little bit. And what Kill Team did was, when you failed your nerf test, you could not move that model either. So that was something that I kicked out to some degree, because the flesh wounds are something I like very much. You, as the attacking player, has some kind of satisfaction. She did some damage, and it is represented in a flesh wound. And the player who is on the receiving end does not immediately lose the model, and that is a mechanic I'm sticking to very much. What I do not like, what Necromunda does, is that you're rolling an extra dice to see what is going on.
Hmm.
Is it a flesh wound? Is it out of action? Or I think, will the model get back up, or you just roll if it is a flesh wound or not? And that is something that I think it stretches out the action, what is actually happened, too much, and is not very satisfying for the player who owns the model.
Yeah, totally agreed. One of the first things when I was talking with kind of my play group, what mechanics of these games that we play do we not like? Let's not use those. And that was one of them. And that's not a diss on any game designer. I mean, it's very, as and as I'm learning, it's really hard to come up with rules and really hard to design a game. One of the things that I do like about Frostgrave, and a lot of games do this, uh, Planet 28 and Brutal Quest do this, is there's armor saves that can potentially negate all or just 1 point of damage, and to me that gives the same kind of satisfaction. It's like, I rolled 12 damage, but your armor save, you saved 8 of it, so you're taking 4, and it still kind of feels the same as feels satisfying that I was able to inflict some damage. And it also feels good if the opposite is true, where someone does a bit of damage to my model, but I'm still able to use my model that I've spent all this time building and painting and coming up with rules and a backstory for. And so because of that too, it's a little bit more streamlined. The math is all in the single or double digits, so it's easy and quick to do, and it doesn't feel boring or tedious, kind of like those injury die that you mentioned.
Yes, and what I found out is the option to have more than one to, well, let's say 6 wounds on a character is a great difference. So far I'm still sticking to the 1 hit point model, but when especially you're seeing the life ticking down on one of your models, and now this character or this model is just on 1 hit points, it gets so much more frantic and exciting in the game itself. Especially for me, I don't know how other people feel about it, but when I played the new kill team and my guardsmen took a hit and were from 7 to 1 hit point, it felt way more dangerous and exciting than just okay, now he's from 1 to 0 and has a flesh wound. And that is something I might revisit in the other gaming system. So far, I think I will stick to the max, I think, 3 wound system. There's also something, I don't know how Frostgrave tackles it. In a sci-fi setting, you have very powerful weapons, and I think Necromunda does it that if you get hit by a very strong weapon, your model goes down no matter what. And it might not die, but it goes down certainly. And in Kill Team, it is that the stronger weapon has a greater chance to take you out of action, and the way they do it is not very intuitive, but it
Hmm.
represents the effect better. And what do you think is a good representation of a dangerous weapon, like getting hit by a laser or by a rocket launcher? Have you any solutions or to that, or are you sticking to a certain system and are happy with it?
Actually not something I've given a ton of consideration to, other than just this will do a lot of damage. And since the kind of the stat line that we've been using for our games is that kind of just a random, a hive scum or a random thug or whatever will have about maybe 20 health. The reason we did that is because we like role playing games, and it just feels a little bit more role play RPG to have that kind of um, system. And then in turn, when you're rolling dice to do damage, you get to roll more dice, and that's fun too. Instead of rolling 1 or 2 dice, maybe you're rolling 4 or 5, and that just, who doesn't want to roll dice? I want to roll dice. That's why I play games. So a big weapon, um, a powerful weapon, I should say. The way we've been handling it so far is, it just does that much more d6 worth of damage. You roll 6d6 for a big laser instead of 3d6 for a auto gun or whatever. And when you're out of action is just when you're reduced to actually having 0 health. Then your model is removed from the table, and then after the game you roll on a survival chart. We used the Frostgrave survival chart for a long time, and used the Planet 28 survival chart a little bit here and there. But the games tend to be really freeform, and you were saying you're fortunate to have a play group that'll play test your rules. And similarly, I feel like the folks that I play with generally are really just want something cool to happen, and they don't necessarily care about winning the game or if they are the victor in any sort of scenario. And the tagline that we say is, yeah, that seems cool. And it's like, one of us will say, hey, I think my model should be able to do this, and the other person will say, yeah, that seems cool. Just make it happen. And what that does is it really takes off the competitive thing. I'm not saying there's no room for some competitiveness, but in a narrative setting, definitely am not interested in any sort of cheesy thing or breaking the game in any way. And
it is.
go ahead.
Oh, please continue.
I was just gonna say the RPG aspect of it is kind of having this really high life count, 20 or 30 or 40 hit points. And for me, it's watching my model go from 40 to 20 to 5 to maybe they're at 5 and my opponent just needs to deal 5 damage, but they only deal 4. And now like you were saying with Kill Team, now he's on his last hit point and he needs to get the heck out of there or secure the objective or whatever. And it adds a level of urgency and excitement, kind of like you were saying.
Oh yeah, if you play in a if everyone agrees to have a narrative or like Games Workshop put it out there, cinematic experience, which some people have a problem with, who are like the rules way more than the action that happens on the tabletop. Of I'm being I've I stop assuming. Okay, I stop assuming, and I just say where was I? Ah, god damn it! I cut myself off. Where was I going? I had something I wanted to talk about, and now I completely tripped and drowned myself in my own brain.
You were
Yes,
saying
yes, I remember. I remember. Okay, so you have a playing group that is likes the narrative style and prefers the rule of cool and is very willing to bend the rules for cinematic action. So just the two players who are playing are handling this, or is there something like a game master that is watching all over this?
so far it's just the two. I'm not opposed to a game master or anything like that. I think that sounds fun. But I think a, it's almost like a testament to being able to play well with others if you are willing to go along with something that is happening, narratively speaking, that does not benefit your goal. And I don't mean your personal goal in life, but your model's goal in the game. And to me, that creates a more interesting gaming experience.
Yes, it is. you have two people who enjoy stories, and both are now creating a story together, and they are using some abstract rules to help them creating that story. That is something I liked very much when I talked to Rob, also known as Grizzly Vegeta, that when he started out, he had a friend that played orcs, and he played Crimson Fists, and they would add trophies from the other army to their army to have
Love
that
that.
as a reminder of the games they played. And I like that very much, to have,
Yeah.
well, basically, um, yeah, as I said, two people are creating a story, and on the other hand, you have, well, two people playing a game with a goal to win. And there is where I think a lot of the friction comes in, because well, we are playing no matter who you are playing a game, but one has the philosophy, I'm playing a game, and there are certain conditions that lead me to the win, which I find very enjoyable. And on the other hand, you have the more narrative driven players who are like, okay, I, uh, I want to have I want to forge an interesting story, and then of course you have different kind of characters. You have the sore loser. You have the even a bad winner. They both can ruin the gaming experience quite rapidly. At least for me. The games I find the most enjoyable are the ones that are very close calls, where anything could happen until the very end. And especially with Warhammer 40k, a lot of times you have a situation that you have a game that is set for maybe, let's say, 5-4 turns, but already in turn 2 you know where the road is going, where the story is going. There is no winning for the other side, and this is something that drove me away from Warhammer 40k in its current state.
Agreed. I played a few games of eighth and a few games of ninth, and that's about how my 40k experience goes. Generally, I play it a few times a year. And I've got orcs and I've got some Imperial Fist Space Marines, kind of just playing both ends of the spectrum there, you know. And I just think it's a big bummer when in your head you feel like something should go a certain way, but then the rules play out a different way, and that's just part of it being a dice game. It's always the literal luck of the dice. But always disappointed if, and on either way, if there was a crushing defeat on either side. I don't like to lose, but I also really don't like to just totally crush somebody. And it seems like a lot of that, it tends to be more common when I play 40k. It's just I rolled hot on my first or second turn and rolled a lot of big numbers, and you rolled a lot of small numbers, and now I'm winning, you know. And what I really like in a narrative game, a skirmish war game, is, you know, if a model's weapon range is a half an inch out of range or something like that, the opponent says close enough or whatever, you know, and just allows an opportunity for something interesting to happen other than, oh, I re-roll all my ones and now I'm rolling more dice than I should be rolling because these sixes explode or whatever. And it just gets to be literally math hammer as opposed to, yeah, that's cool, or yeah, close enough, or yeah, that seems cool. Let's do it. Let's do it that way. Um, and so it's one of those things where it's different games for different people, and I'm happy to kind of explore all of them. But it does become very boring to me when turn two, it's very obvious to me that my less than optimized orc list is just going to get destroyed by a very competitive, Space Marine list, and then I'm just sitting there waiting for my chance to maybe get to, chop some dudes up or something before I pack up my 100 orc boys and go home.
Yeah, yeah. I play Tyranids, and sometimes it is very disheartening to just set up 100 plus models, and after turn two have half of them or more than half of them back in the box. It is it is
Yeah.
also a time investment, and the the older I get, the less time I have, and in that time I want to have the most fun. And little skirmish games are accomplishing that way better than big army games, in my opinion. It just yeah, the joy is gone. I'm no longer in love with big army games, although I am working with a friend on our own version of 40k, so where we put in all the rules we like. We had our first game. It went astonishingly, it went well, and we both were very afraid that it won't turn out well at all, because he was the very first prototype of the rules, and at the end we were like, huh, that was fun. Okay, let's stick to that. But that project is on ice for a while now.
Yeah. I
Turning it to another topic,
uh,
because you are a creator of miniatures.
yeah.
uh, and something that is not that usual to see on Instagram. What can you tell us about the Prometheum Waste Chop Shop?
Oh yeah. So Andrew, Painty Ways is his Instagram handle. A couple of years ago now, he had come up with this really great setting, which has just sort of been in the background, and it's just sort of been this uh, community, online community of people sort of collaborating, creating models, and doing these sort of challenges. I hesitate to call them a challenge because it's really more like a prompt or just a gentle nudge into try to create this type of model sort of thing. But during the spring of last year, I guess 2020 is when it really started kicking off. He came up with this really cool setting of people sort of, you know, all walks of life from all sorts of different planets and whatnot had sort of conglomerated on this one planet, and they're racing. They're in their speeders and they're racing, and it was stemmed. The whole thing. I don't want to speak for him, but I think the whole thing came from the deodorant bottle speeder challenge. And so a group of us found a container and made a a speeder from a deodorant container or whatever. I used a two stroke oil bottle and kind of turned it on its side and cut a cockpit into it. And there's still stuff going on, and just kind of like all projects, long-term projects, it sort of ebbs and flows. Um, I don't know too much what the future holds for that, but for a while it was really fun and created a lot of sort of in the group chat, just came up with a lot of story, a lot of fiction, a lot of background that doesn't really impact anything gameplay wise. Or I mean, there's not even games to be played of it, but it's just sort of this general setting uh, that really actually spawned a lot of great projects. Knife Squid, my buddy Mike on Knife Squid, he creates models for it, creates work for it all the time, and has a really interesting warband of green steelers, orc gene stealers that are kind of the scourge of the Prometheum waste, but in a nice way, I guess. Yeah, you'd have to pick his brain about it, but yeah, it's a very cool project. My guys are the Seven Scholars, and sort of the backstory on them is they're a bit rogue trader-esque, I guess, in that they are technically employed by the Imperium, but they just kind of get to do whatever they want, and they maybe do or don't really care to align themselves with the Imperium, but they definitely will take the paycheck. But yeah, that's there's a lot going on, and a lot of people have created a lot of really cool work for it. If you haven't explored the Dio Speeder hashtag, I definitely recommend it. There's a lot of really cool work on there. Yeah,
So
so
the Dio speeder, but is there a general hashtag where you can find all the
let me
members
give
of
it.
the group?
That's a great question, Joe. Let me scroll back here and see what
I see the hashtag Prometheum Waste Chop Shop,
I think
and
that's the one.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's the one. It's been a bit since we've really worked on anything on that, but it looks like there's some recent work from this summer. Some folks are coming up with their walkers and their mechanics and their crew, and it's very. I would say it's kind of Gaslands esque, kind of Mad Maxy a little bit in that it's just sort of a ragtag group of people, and they're just going out on the wastelands and drag racing was really kind of what the start of it was. So
Okay. Yeah. At first, when you explained it, I was so the word "wacky race" was already jumping into my head,
yeah,
and yeah, I am a great fan of the concept of wacky racing and just having well, different characters or different stereotypes mashed together and racing each other. And yes, I have the Gaslands rulebook. I even made 3 different 40k teams for it, but so far I have not played it. I did not find the time so far, but I'm very interested into how Gaslands plays.
yeah. I picked up the refueled
Yeah,
rule book.
Gasland refueled.
Yeah, I've been flipping through it a little bit, and a customer at the game store brought in a full bank box full of cars, and we all just had a heyday just picking out cars. And so I've got a Ziploc bag full of old Matchbox and Hot Wheels cars that eventually I'll get to someday, probably in the dead of winter, uh, when I'm ready to just maybe drink a beer and hang out, roll some dice and move some cars around. That kind of sounds like a good time.
Most certainly. You mentioned Knife Squid. First of all, shout out to Knife Squid, a very good follow on Instagram. He does some amazing orc conversions,
Oh
and
yeah.
you lately did some very archaic looking creatures, dudes for him. Can you? Oh, it is part of the or no, the cult. Or
Oh,
am I getting it wrong? The
oh,
one with the
no, no, no.
flamer?
Yeah, so those weren't for Knife Squid, but
Oh,
Knife Squid, yeah. So Mike always always wants to see work in progress photos, and I'm notoriously bad about posting them. So that was actually just when I posted on the story and said, "Here's some work in progress photos for Knife Squid." I see the confusion. The photos,
okay, okay,
were
okay.
for him. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The cultist Tanner he sent me those heads in a just kind of a little bit of a care package. Just sent me a whole bunch of bits and odds and ends and whatever. And there was a sprue of those cultist heads in there, and they just kind of I don't know. I took to them and I started digging through my bits box and finding models that I could cut the heads off of and stick those on, and came up with a group of cultists. Just as an exercise in using the the things that your friends give you, and really really like the way they came out.
Oh yes, they most certainly look very archaic, and I was hesitant to call you a master of weird, as that is a title I am now giving out. But I think you are more a master of archaic and all. When I, especially when I look at your orcs and other models, you prefer a very old school archaic style of models.
In general, my kind of style, there's a kind of a group chat, myself and Tanner and our other friend Brian at iBrew Tiny. We have a bit of a group chat going where we just sort of, it's just a sounding board for ideas, and we've kind of landed on the like techno fantasy is kind of what we call it, where it's basically just, and I think I even use this phrase on a caption in the photo. It's just like more time and space. Just something that's very feudal and old school looking, but maybe he also has the model has a a pistol or something, and that's generally the kind of, like you said, the archaic look that I find myself going for is yeah, just space fantasy in general, old school and really scaled down. I really don't find myself drawn to anything that's like very tactical or super super techy or anything like that. Um, that's part of the fun with orcs is that even in the 40K universe, they're very much that way, and yeah, I really like that style a lot, and it's fun for me to be able to take a fantasy model and just say, this is a sci-fi model now, and play it in a sci-fi setting, even though it's an orc with an axe or whatever.
Well, orcs lend themselves very well to that kind of story because they might start out as feral orcs and slowly develop into a more civilized versions. Maybe it took them way longer until the mech boy type spawned out, and therefore they are, well, the latest. Orc release is all about that, about the Snakebite clan, who is basically very feral orcs with technological advanced guns.
Yeah.
So they are lending themselves to that very well. And now to my favorite part is of course gushing over your creations, and one that sticks out to me is that great feral orc where you put the it is the warband, the big green dude Bad Moon Crew, where you have this very tall orc and you put the head of the standard of the Iron Jaws on it, and it fits so well, and I love it.
Yeah, I this warband, if I'm thinking of the right one, it's the one with the yellow background, right?
Yes.
I can go on my Instagram, I suppose. So this warband was um, that what I found really liberating in this is that I actually didn't know a ton of the orc lore yet, and it really, I think, kind of loosened me up and let me kind of create this really sort of weird little warband. And this was actually for an Necromunda campaign, an Ash Wastes Necromunda campaign, where we used the Necromunda rules for the most part, and just kind of created some custom stat lines uh, for the characters. So most of the smaller orcs in this are using Goliath stats. A couple of them use the Ogren stats, and then I created a custom stat line for the huge guy. Basically, the story with them is they're a mostly feral warband from the Skull, which is another hive city on the planet Necromunda, and
One could call it Hive City, yes.
or yeah, derelict Hive City, I guess. Um, Feel free to correct me if I misquote any of the lore. I'm not super familiar, but
Oh, I
uh,
won't.
okay, perfect. And another friend in my play group, he painted up some really cool looking fruit, real dingy looking Kroot mercenaries that the backstory on them where they were basically uh, Xenos hunters. So this specific group of Kroot was hyper fixated on uh, eating the most obscure members of any given Xenos race. They really decided they wanted to eat up the orcs in my war band because they were such an odd group. And so we played a few games of Ash Wastes, Necromunda, sort of, and that's kind of right around the time that we went into the initial lockdown here last early spring last year, and so I've still got these guys on the shelf, and I'm waiting for the opportunity to get them back out again. So
So the fight is not over. The Kroot still hunger and the orcs still want to war.
yeah, in a big way. They're both in the display cabinet at the game store, and so every other month or so we'll stare at them and go, one of these days we'll finish this campaign.
Another other thing I want to point out, which I like very much because it is odd, but it works so well. That is your trailer, your all wooden trailer
Oh,
that looks so adorable and strange in a lot of ways.
yeah. So uh, this was really kind of the pretty close to the beginning for me of sort of branching out into kit bashing and kind of creating my own models. The trailer came from in Frostgrave. You get a base for your wizard, and my wizard is the model I was using for my wizard was like a hillbilly with overalls and a shotgun, and he has like a jug of moonshine. And I was like, well, my wizard's base is just almost certainly a trailer, right? And so I created this trailer out of just popsicle sticks and whatnot, and that's kind of where that idea came up from, and actually gets used as a terrain piece pretty often when we do play Frostgrave. There's a ladder on the back, and you can climb up the ladder and go into that kind of little crow's nest thing that's up there. And so, yeah, I quite like that piece. It's definitely weird.
it it also pops out a little because it is well, not a model but a, well, it is a trailer, and I cannot remember for the life of me when was the last time that I saw someone well, making a trailer. It is well, you see tanks and buggies and, well, flyers or some sorts of this, or walkers even a lot, but a trailer that really pops out. And I really like the backstory of it. And I am very sure that some of the regular listeners might take notes and maybe add this kind of terrain in honor of your wizard to their campaign. I hugely encourage that.
I hope
And
so. I see some trailers. That'd be great.
uh, okay, when I first saw it, I of course laughed because, but or then I immediately was intrigued, and then I went into a struggle if I want to bring it up in the podcast or not. Can you guess what I'm talking about?
I definitely have a guess.
And well, let's lift the secret. There's a creature with a crotch gun.
There is a creature with a crotch gun. I struggle. All right, so it's horrible.
This needs
It's a
setup.
it's a terrible thing, and so
In more than
kind of
one way, yes.
yeah, and it's awful. And so Tanner sculpted this head for me, and it's the head bit from like a Gorkanaut, and inside of it he sculpted this face, which is kind of a bit of his signature. This really kind of grotesque looking face with lots of wrinkles and lines and mangled teeth and stuff. And I really wanted to do it justice. I had it sitting around for a long time, and I really, really love it. I'm almost remiss that I've used it because I want to keep using that bit. And but I had this D&D model, and I'm always just chopping things up and cutting arms and heads off and just sort of seeing what works, and had sort of blue tacked this head on top and just felt like it was missing something and wanted to give it a gun. Why not just give it a gun, and had this other gun bit, and had decided at this point that I was going to make this into some sort of horrible chaos spawn or some sort of dark admech something or other, something with that vibe. And the gun just sort of like felt like it needed to go in the crotch of this model, and I really struggled with it, just as you struggled with bringing it up. I after I finished building it and painting it, I posted it to my Instagram story, but just to like my close friends list, and I said, "Is this too much? Am I doing the wrong thing?" And most of the responses were pretty encouraging. What finally pushed me to just photograph it and post it was Totally Not Panicking, who has quite the presence on Instagram and has just been really encouraging. He doesn't have to take the time out of his day to talk to me, but he always does, and I really appreciate that. But he just was like, "Man, this is cool. You should post it." And the more I looked at it, kind of the less funny it got to me. It's obviously funny, right? It's a guy with a crotch gun, like you said. But it became like very kind of quote like 40K, and that it's just kind of insane and horrible. And I think that if you were to scale this thing up, it's about twice the size of like a Space Marine. And I think that it would just be an absolute horrifying thing to encounter. And in the grimdark future of 40K, I just felt like it actually is not funny. And even though I'm laughing as I say that, there's just something about it that is more, to me, there's more than what it appears to be. And hopefully that resonates. I want people to think it is funny, but I also want people to know that I didn't do it just for the penis joke, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Just to check, did you have any negative responses to the miniature?
Yeah, definitely. Even some people who I thought wouldn't respond negatively. I actually had a couple just private messages that were like, "Hey, this is horrible." I was like, I know it is. But I just felt like I was not being genuine if I didn't post it. I was really proud of it. I took a long, I painted it carefully. I didn't just slap paint on it. A lot of times I'm guilty of just slapping a bunch of brown paint on something, but I just, I was very intentional when I created it, and I just felt like I wanted to post it. And well, to be honest with you, I didn't feel like I wanted to post it. I felt like I should post it. But yeah, there were definitely some negative responses. But it just came down to, this is my art. Not to be totally serious about it, right? It's meant for fun, but this is my art, and I want to put it out, and hopefully people will see it the way I see it, as uh, just this insane, horrible thing that is humorous, but also really unsettling and kind of weird. But I didn't do it for the shock value, if that makes sense. Um,
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think you nailed it.
Thank you, thank you.
This miniature, well, it has the well at first the ha penis
Sure.
reaction to it, but on second
Totally.
glance, it carries a lot of body horror.
Yeah,
And I think the head Tanner sculpted lends to that a lot because, in my opinion, he has that style of unintentional, horrifying children claymation.
yeah,
Like
yes,
like it is a claymation for intended for children, but it is so weird and horrifying at the time that you have to think that it is something went wrong here, and the miniature transport, something, this, the agony that the face captures is, it just steers you in the right direction. And well, talking about 40k, where basically everything is possible, this creature fits right in. And yeah, it it is not a simple topic because of the phallic nature and what comes with it. There is well, a ton of worms, not a can of worms, to open here if you want
yeah,
to. But I think it it does what you are intending. Well, at least it does for me. It is like, oh, ha, funny, and then you're like, wait, that's not that. Oh my god, this is so horrible. As the longer you're looking at it, the more horrible it gets. I myself have an orc walker with a crotch cannon, and it is all mechanics, and that is not that horrifying. It is just, well, it is mounted down there because I had no place to mount it on top.
yeah,
That is my excuse. And then I
sure,
was like, hey, yeah, it's a crotch cannon, and as orcs are, well, basically asexual mushrooms right now in 40k, if it has none of the sexual baggage packed to it. It's just like, well, it's a crotch cannon, and you
sure.
might think of it what you want. Yes.
Tasteful, much more tasteful. Yeah, I definitely didn't want this to be something that was like a commentary on anything uncomfortable. You know, I mean, I wasn't doing it to be weird about it, even though it is by nature very weird. Um, but yeah, I appreciate you saying that it achieved the desired effect, because even though this, I have, what, 500 followers or whatever, I'm not
Criminally
like,
low number, I might say. You deserve way more than 500.
thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm certainly not like a celebrity. It's not a distasteful tweet that's going to end my career by any means. But I wanted to be careful in not making my followers feel uncomfortable by something I've done. If and I hope that overall that's not the case. Although, like I said, there were a vocal few who I genuinely did appreciate that feedback. I think it's bold to direct message someone and tell them that you don't like their work. And
It is also way more honest, just not like, okay, I want to talk to you about it and not in the open. I much dislike that, having this open conversation like, hey, I'm calling you out for whatever, and everyone should see that I do that. And that leads to a way more uh, distorted kind of conversation, while just going up to someone in person and say, hey, I think you crossed the line here, and then you can talk to them about it and maybe clear the air or
yeah,
have a conversation, at least a conversation or discussion about it. It's so much more value in that, I think.
it was a great lesson for me, because I think historically I would have been really quick to defend myself and try to explain to someone why this piece of art I've created is so great or whatever. But that's not realistic. And also, you mentioned it where early on where we wanted to create a space that was friendly and inviting. I want to do that with this hobby too, because I want this hobby to be for everybody, and I definitely don't want to alienate anybody. And so one person that messaged me, I kind of had a similar conversation as you and I are having right now, and I think, were swayed. I wouldn't say their mind was completely changed, but they at least kind of saw it from what I was getting at, and another person just was not on board, and it almost made me delete the photo. And I asked them actually if I should, and they said no. To their credit, they said no, it's your art. You should leave it up, but I hate it. I was like, okay.
Well, that's fair enough.
Yeah, totally,
it,
totally.
that is way more valuable than just well, the worst thing that could happen to content that you create is that it is being ignored, because then you have achieved nothing, I guess. Unless, well, in some way, creating stuff does not have to be for a public audience. If no one would like my stuff, I wouldn't care that much about it, because the process is very important to me. And yeah, very,
Yeah,
very deep and thoughtful thoughts, I think, for this podcast. In the end, we blasted through this hour.
yeah, totally.
And thank you so much for your time. As
Yeah,
always, it I enjoyed it very much. I hope you did too.
yeah, totally. I love it.
Great.
I'm surprised the hour went so quickly.
Yeah, well, the first 5 minutes of a podcast, I'm very anxious. But as soon as I am past half of it, I just let it run. I have no
Yeah,
worries anymore, and yes, again, I enjoyed it a lot. I hope the listeners do too. And yeah, we're done for now.
yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Goodbye, everybody.